Hello, beautiful people. How are all of you doing today? Hello, chat. I am actually feeling good today. You want to know why? It's not because of the fav, although I'm sure that plays a role. No, it's because of some news that I came across yesterday. For those musically inclined, we have free downloadable sheet music of songs from Hades, Transistor, and Bastion. Can I get a fucking pog? Can I get a pog champ in the chat? But yeah, so I spent a little bit of time yesterday playing the piano for the first time in a long ass time. I got the start of it down, but it's really hard for me to sing while I'm playing. I really can't. So that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Play it? I mean, I only know the start of it, and it's not like, it doesn't sound that great without the voice part, but sure. I only have the start of it down, but I'm gonna try to learn the next part soon. It sounds so good. I mean, if you guys want to listen to the original one, I just added it to the playlist because it's so good. I can sing it. Might as well. March into the past. Wait. Up for me a little bit. Seconds march into the past. The moments pass. And just like that, they're gone. The river always finds the sea so helplessly, like you find me. We are paper boats floating on a stream, and it would seem we'll never be apart. I will always find you, like it's written in the stars. You can run, but you can't hide. Try. Like the moon that makes the tides, that silent guide is calling from inside. Pull me here and push me there. It's everywhere, hanging in the air. We are magnets pulling from different poles with no control. We'll never be apart. I will always find you like it's written in the stars. You can run, but you can't hide. Try. It's such a banger. Play Transistor, chat. I will always, always find you. I will always. I will always, always find you. I will always. I will always find you like it's written in the stars. We can run, but we can't hide. Try. I will always find you like it's written in the stars. We can run, but we can't hide. Try. I will always, always find you. I will always. What a banger song. What a banger song. It's really fun to sing too. It's a bit rough for my range, but it's still really fun. But you were the 24 months, lad. Holy. Holy. Can you give us a TLDR of what Transistor is about? I feel like you're better off going in blind. I wish I liked Transistor more. It has such good music. I feel the same way. I don't dislike Transistor, but it's my least favorite Supergiant game. You played Pyre? Yeah. I liked Pyre a lot more. It's just the gameplay for Transistor just wasn't for me. Which is unfortunate. Because like the story's sick and the music is so fucking good. But the gameplay felt a little too veg for me. Please can't claim the cute little dragon from Mel. What are you yapping about? What kind of yap do we got? Check mail? I can't do that while I'm in a domain. Zaj, you're the yapper? Shut up, yapper. They give us a dragon? Dragon D's nuts. I got him. Chat, should I do the, should I do the mini now? I'm not to do the mini now, actually. Ooh, what the fuck? Is this a 7x7? That's not a mini. Direction of the sunset. They're just... Wait, chat. Is the sunset in the west or in the east? I think it's the west, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure anymore. Uh-oh. It's west. It's west. It's west. It's west. It's west for sure. Go outside more? That won't help. I don't know which way is west. Anyways. Oh, Uncle... Fuck, is it Gomez? No. No. Fuck, what is it? Whatever. Long, slithery fish. Eel. Piece on a coat track. Hat? Wearers of collars with their owner's number on them. With their owner's number on them. It's not pets, it's a fucking 7-letter word. It could be animals, but I feel like that has to be wrong. Okay, group of naval ships is fleet. For sure. Okay, so it's not animals. Yeehaw! No shot, it's yee. Okay. Okay. Rolling in the dough, so to speak. Jokey suffix with best? I'm so confused. First instruction in a list of instruction. What in the fuck? Is it just S? There's no way it's S. I like that doesn't make any sense. Maybe it is. What's a tricky spot for vacuuming? A corner? Fucking... Maybe it's not hot. Maybe this is supposed to be rugs. I don't know. Dude, I hate when the mini's not a real mini, man. Run out of battery. What the fuck could this be? It could be die, I guess. Yeah. I feel like this has to be hot, no? Or it could be... It could be Thai? Maybe? Spirited energy. What could the spirited energy be? Zen? There's no way this is a zl word. Oh! Huge, huge. Okay, wait, that's massive. And this is rugs for sure. Now, this has to be rugs. There's no shot. There's another 4-letter household item that has a U as a second letter. Is it P? What the fuck could this word be? Wealthy. Insane. Okay, maybe this isn't die then. No shot! Wait, is it pet dogs? No! No! It can't be pet dogs! You can't do this to me! It can't be pet dogs! It can't— no! No! You can't do this to me! I am— ah! Is this Peg? I didn't know there would be some pegging in my mini, but okay. Pog? Dude, okay, this is ass. This is step one, isn't it? Shit mini, holy fuck! T-egg? What are you yapping about? I mean, actually, that might actually be a real thing. But pet dog? Yee? Step one? Dude, what's going on here? The fuck is this? Anyways, let's do the connections. Surely it'll go better today. Quality, birth, house, plant. Remote, lodge, hybrid, compound, cross, cruise, stick, hotel, token, blend, wedge, deed. Okay. Hybrid, cruise, stick. Maybe not. Lodge, house, hotel. No. Wait, compound maybe? Fuck. Hybrid, compound, blend, cross. Okay. Plant, wedge, lodge, house. Fuck. I'm not sure about house. I don't know what the other one is. Surely it's not stick. It can't be stick. There's no shot it's stick. It's fucking stick. Ain't no way. That's so informal. In what formal setting are you saying you're gonna stick something in there? Like what? Whatever, man. Remote control, quality control, cruise control, birth control. What the fuck is the link between these? It's items in a Monopoly book. Okay. Okay, dude. Whatever. Let's do the Wordle. Stare. Pound. Zilch. Grain. Brain. Holy speedrun. What does zilch means? It means like nothing. None. Yeah. Let's do le mot, actually. I'm down. Let's do the French Wordle. What? Dude, what in the fuck? Where are my vowels, dude? This is gonna be an awful guess, but... There's only one E and it's at the end? Dude, what in the fuck? That can't be real. Is it a Y then? Dude, what? Is thyme even in French? It's not written thyme. It wouldn't work. There is a word for thyme, but it's tiny. There's no E in it. I don't really... I think I have to guess for more letters. Okay. Okay. Woo! Woo! We did it! Easy, yeah. Not even close. What does myth mean? It's the French for myth. It's a sword from much later. Alhaitham. It's later than Alhaitham. Farina. Oh, it was Farina. Well, that was easy. Oh ho! And here I thought you'd ask me to perform some magic with these material. Well, that was easy. I don't know. I'm gonna guess at random. That looks like a cat, so it's probably Carrara or Diona. Or maybe not. That's not Diona. Is it Linny again? Is it Linny again? Dude, what the fuck? You can't have the same for the quote and the ability. That's fucked up. I mean, at this point, dude, like, fuck it. Okay, no. Oh, I mean... nice and spicy. Nice and spicy. Alright. Destruction released before. Arlen. Released in 1.0, Destruction, not from her to Space Station. Let's try Clara. It is a Destruction from Gerillo. Who's Destruction from Gerillo? Hook? It's Hook. Elio said that I'm good at creating fear even though I don't know what it is. Okay, so it has to be... I'm guessing that's Firefly. I'm not sure though. It's Kafka, but Kafka knows what... Oh, I guess maybe it's supposed to be like, I've never experienced fear, so I've... Like, I interpreted it as this person is such an idiot, they don't know what fear means, which would fit Firefly. But maybe it's supposed to be this person has never experienced fear. So I guess, yeah, Kafka makes more sense. The Firefly shade. I mean, am I wrong? Am I wrong? What the fuck is that? Looks like a plunge attack. I don't know who that is. Maybe that's a lightning character. Perhaps. Acheron. Unlock hint. Good night, Bellabog. Huh. I see. My goat. It's an attack character. It's Ellen. Easy. Easy. Time for some hard labor. 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 Ben is the only thing that's worth remembering from ZZZ. Agreed? Agreed. Time for some hard labor. Dude, how do I still not have a fucking second set? Oh, by the way, Jamie, if you're still here, have you heard? Have you heard the good news? Good news, I got Twitch partner today. Better news than that. Congrats, though, but news more important than that. I've apparently had a 5 sword hidden in a sea of flutes for the past 3 months. R3 now? No. I have an R3, but I already had that. I'm not refining it again. I'm keeping a second one. If you want your this is too good, but like ugh. If you want your verified thing to like show up properly, you're supposed to go in your chat identity on the left of the message box. How many subs for R4? I'm not doing it for any amount of subs. Oh, wait, that's good. That's huge. No, it seems like I'm seeking attention. It's fine. You only have to do it once. Now it's gonna show up for... It's gonna show up all the time. Unless you actively take it off. Even Jamie made a XILONEN video. I'll make it! I'll record today, Chad! I will! Why do I get the feeling that after you pulled Kanish, I'll never see you play Melody again? Gee, I wonder. Okay, is today the day for the materials for Fav? Because I only need to do to spend resin one more time, and I have it 90. Is it today? It is. No, it's not. Oh. My today ends in 3 hours. Well, honestly, that's on you. Fucking European. Cringe as fuck. You're in the same continents as Americans, and European, it's gotta be Asian. I mean, if it's 9 p.m. over there, that's a 6-hour time difference from me, which is usually Europe. Nine p.m. here in France, yeah. That makes sense. Without going into leaks, I'm super curious if Zajef has a similar tone and impression to me. I've heard a little bit about what you think, and I heard that you think of her as like a worse Zhongli, or something like that. I think you got one guide by someone making up my take. I see. So what do you think of her then? Just a lot of different practical things I was concerned about for various teams since she's very overhyped right now. I can watch your video and tell you what I think if you want. Fuck. Omega low roll, holy shit.
Okay, get your pitchforks ready. It's time for another bad take first impression video. Previously, I've had Farina is not guaranteed to buff your Hu Tao and Neuvillette because of her ramping buffs, long animations, and teammate restrictions. Shannon is niche and only really an improvement to about 3 characters. There was also this series where I thought Arlecchino was overpowered and Hu Tao wasn't a good comparison. Wait. You could say all those ended up being pretty true. Anyway, I got a lot of negative comments in those videos at the time though. So this time we've got XILONEN. Of course, XILONEN just got revealed in the official 5.1 preview live stream. She sounds great. A geo healer capable of shredding resistance for multiple elements. That sounds great for my Navia and probably other teams too. But then people in my chat and other communities started popping off. I heard she's Geo Bennett because she's a healer buffer, Geo Kazuha because of the red shred and damage buffs from the new scroll artifact set, Zhongli power creep because comparing a 1.1 character to a 5.1 character, they're going to have bigger buffs. And remember, I don't do leaks, I'm just theory crafting based on my understanding of the game so far. And honestly, I was thinking about it, and based on what info we have, I don't think she actually sounds like a Bennett, Kazuha or Xiangling type character where she will be best in slot in a ton of teams. At least that's not guaranteed. Let me cook. First of all, and this might be a bit of a nitpick, but personally I don't think Kazuha is a good comparison at all. I don't really know why people keep saying Geo Kazuha this, Geo Kazuha that. Here's the thing, there are a dozen characters good at healing, but there's only really one character good at grouping. Kazuha isn't just buffs, grouping is a massive part of his kit. I think the best comparison is more like a healing Zhongli.
Wait, I don't disagree that the grouping is a good part of his kit, but I don't think that that means that they're not really comparable. Because you don't really often build your team around the fact that you need grouping. If you have grouping, that's good for AoE content, of course. But you're not going to put Kazuha in a team where he's not actually being useful. Like, you're not going to put Kazuha in a Dendro team for the sake of grouping. His main purpose in a team is to be a buffer. So I do think that a comparison between Kazuha and XILONEN is very much still warranted. Obviously, they're not the same unit. They're going to have differences, but I still think that they should be compared.
With a less clunky artifact set, since the new scrolls set is just a lot less clunky than Tenacity of the Millilith, or especially set is just a longly with a less clunky artifact set, since the new scrolls set is just a lot less clunky than Tenacity of the Millilith, or especially Archaic Petra. But let's get into teams. So for Navia teams, Geo Res Shred and 40% damage bonus from scrolls sounds like a massive upgrade for Navia. As a Navia speedrunner myself, that would be pretty hype if her damage per screenshot gets even crazier. But here's the thing I think many people are overlooking. Just adding those buffs is assuming a perfect scenario, but there are many things to be concerned about. First of all, Navia heavily revolves around her skill and maxing out these stacks. And maxing out these shotgun stacks requires a lot of regular crystallized reactions to be made by your team. You get a lot of multiplier buffs by hitting this max. And this is why teammates like Kachina, Xiangling, Chiori, Zhongli are very effective. The Geos have off-field Geo application, and Xiangling obviously has no ICD on a Pyro app. I don't know if you've heard about this no ICD Pyronado thing. Anyway, from how they explain XILONEN's kit, she doesn't really have this off-field Geo app. It's just her burst doing a few hits and healing. So you're going to be reliant on Navia generating enough stacks by herself, almost as if she is in a solo Geo team. You might have heard somewhere on the internet that Navia can make full stacks herself and her teammate application makes no difference, but as someone who's probably spent hundreds of hours speed running and optimizing every little thing about Navia, I wish that were true, but it really isn't. Enough yapping though, let me do a quick example of what this could look like.
What the fuck did you just say? Guards, take him away. Give him an hour to think.
So this is Navia Kachina, a team with good off-field Geo application. Let's see what the stack generation looks like.
Everybody stand back. Feeling lucky? This one's got your name on it.
This one's got your name on it.
This one's got your name on it.
Let's see what Navia Chiori stack generation looks like as well.
Everybody stand back. Eat this. Feeling lucky? Coming at ya.
As you can see, I was generating a lot of application there. I'm maxing out on my stacks pretty consistently. A good way I can demonstrate no Geo app, I guess, is by using Zhongli's burst only. So let's do that. So this might be similar to how XILONEN's stack generation is. Just using Zhongli's burst, and then that's all we're getting from the other Geo. So you can see at the start, we're getting some good Geo app there. Now I'm struggling to max that second one. And by the third shot, yeah, I'm struggling to max out the third shot as well. So these are some old calcs I had with Zhongli Navia, and then I added in an extra 40% damage for Kachina, and those rough numbers for Navia's damage are about here. So even if I'm theoretically getting a huge upgrade with XILONEN, maybe even 17 to 20% theoretical upgrade, but the benefit I get from this is rapidly deteriorating if I'm not getting full stacks. And this can get even worse if you've ever compared Xiangling versus using Farina, because you might be hyping up XILONEN as a way of getting more buffs from Farina because XILONEN is a healer, but it's a big assumption to think that things will work perfectly for these either. Farina's Hydra app is okay, but it doesn't compare to Xiangling's Pyro app. I can show you a quick example here.
Okay, all these things, like, they're fair. I think it's fair to say that while XILONEN is definitely a good option for Navia teams and often going to be the best Geo, it is reasonable to not think it's that big of a deal. Like that's fair.
Is a lot of people don't know this and overlook this, but these geo resonance buffs that are actually quite decent, they aren't actually guaranteed in every geo team. As you can see here, characters need to be protected by a shield, and you're basically only really guaranteed that with Zhongli's fat shield. And I wish
the damage bonus, that's true, but the res shred is pretty much guaranteed if you're playing a geo team like this, because you're getting crystallized. And you just need to hit them once while under a crystallized shield to get the res shred, because it lasts for so long.
Crystallized shields were guaranteed perfect uptime on these, but they really aren't. I noticed it when I was first testing switching Zhongli for Chiori, and it's definitely noticeable how Navia starts getting hit and staggered more, especially versus bosses. And say for example, let's say if I simulate having less uptime on Geo res stuff, that's also a way she
Plus, for Navia specifically, whenever you hold E, you absorb the crystallized shield. So you're pretty much guaranteed that your E's damage, if you're holding it, is benefiting from the geo resonance.
Increase can go down, and again, this is also before factoring in that Kachina can actually do okay off-field damage. I know most people haven't really built her yet. She works perfectly fine at level 20 with barely any talents, but you can build her for damage, and I actually think I can get somewhere around 150k damage per rotation, somewhere around that, because I've got her C6. I'm still working on my build, but she can be built for damage, and her damage, say if I even add 100k DPR, that's basically cancelling out, assuming that XILONEN doesn't really do much damage herself. And look, it makes sense really. They've just released Chiori and Kachina as geo off-fielders, and I think they've carefully designed XILONEN so she doesn't do this too, and so she's not just better in every way. Now lastly, but certainly not least, there's the issue of geo shield content, and the truth is, a lot of geo content in the Abyss, the enemies that they put in to advertise geo characters like Navia, and that's when a lot of people are playing Navia, they often quite put in bosses with tough geo shields. Like
it is fucking annoying.
Geo local legend I think is around here, and Legato's 2 targets. Anyway, overall it's hard to tell with Navia. I don't want to be too negative. I'm like maybe 50-50 on it at the moment. Me personally, I play Navia a lot. I would love it if she gets even more cracked with a teammate buff. It would make all my Na'Vi videos even faster, but as you can see, there's quite a lot of things to be concerned about. So one of Zhongli's most popular uses at the moment is like a Neuvillette hypercarry team. And Zhongli is good here, but he doesn't do that much theoretically. So people are freaking out about how XILONEN is obviously going to power creep this slot and make Neuvillette even stronger than he already is. I mean, if you compare Zhongli, he has Shred, but it's only 20. And he has Archaic Petra, but it's 35% and it's very clunky compared to the support set Natlan characters can use. And in the Hydro team with Neuvillette, it's not going to be hard to activate this. But here's the first issue. XILONEN is a healer. And as we know, most people, at least if you've got a C0 Neuvillette, don't like playing him without a shielder. Getting stunned out of his charge attack is rough. Zhongli is just too comfortable to play, and Neuvillette is already strong. And people even play Baiju here, who doesn't really do that much, but he does give interrupt resistance, and he also heals. But even if XILONEN gives slightly more buffs theoretically, I think there's a good chance, at least in terms of usage, people will prefer sticking with someone like Zhongli. And besides, even if you can play Neuvillette fine without a shield, like me with my account, he's only C0. There's also offensive teammates like Xiangling, but you might find Xiangling clunky to use, fair enough. But there's also another thing I have about Neuvillette. By the way, before I forget, Kachina is also really good for...
I think it'd be fair to argue that XILONEN is a better offensive teammate than Xiangling for Neuvillette. I don't think she's going to necessarily beat him out on speedruns. Because once you reach enough investment, one vape is basically enough to fucking kill an enemy. But outside of like specific speedrunning situations, I do think XILONEN is a better offensive teammate than Xiangling for him.
For Neuvillette, if you want a non-clunky teammate. But yeah, the thing with Neuvillette is, even if you want a DPS upgrade, is it likely XILONEN will be stronger than just pulling Neuvillette C1 or even C2 or C3, like a C1 giving another stack, usually ends up...
That's a fine way to look at it, but I do think that pulling for a new character is inherently different from pulling for a constellation. Pulling for a constellation is just boring.
More than like 25% damage increase, and you get this infinite hyper armor here as well, or going from like a 4-star weapon like prototype Amber to a signature weapon can be even close to 40% of an upgrade. Let's be honest, I doubt XILONEN will match that, but it's not even that. What about C1 on Farina? This is a big damage boost and it's front loaded. Will XILONEN match that? See, that's the thing about most newer DPSs that I've noticed. Their weapons and early constellations are so strong. I was actually planning on making a video on this topic actually, but if you really care about your damage, or if you're pulling for damage, it's been hard to justify getting a 5-star support when the DPS's vertical investment is just so good. Yeah, sure, maybe in calculation theory crafting, where everything is stuck at C0 and 4-star weapons, you can think of this hypothetical scenario where XILONEN is a massive upgrade, but everyone has their own account. For your account and everyone's account, vertical investment is on the table. It's a real thing. So let me ask you this: if XILONEN does end up a weaker upgrade than getting Neuvillette C1, and the only real comeback you could give is that you don't want to C1, you want to invest horizontally and pull more characters, if that's your only real answer, then you kind of just have to accept that that's just your personal account preference. But those personal limitations are not an objective fact on what is an upgrade or not. And this is coming from someone
I don't think that's a good way of thinking about it, though. Like, it's something that you can say, yes, it would be better to pull for a constellation for this character instead of a new support for them, when talking about pretty much every support and every like character that doesn't have dogshit constellations. And it feels like it's being used to completely dismiss XILONEN's value.
who I myself don't like getting much constellations either, but
Like,
coming are not an objective fact on what is an upgrade or not. And this is coming from someone who objective fact on what is an upgrade or not.
I mean, they are objective. It is an objective fact that the XILONEN team will do more damage than the Zhongli team. It's your subjective opinion that that's less valuable than a slightly bigger upgrade through constellations. Like, you're presenting your point of view as the only valid one based on objective facts, but like that's not true. That's because what you're looking for is a specific thing that you subjectively chose. And it's fine, there's nothing wrong with that, but you're... I don't know.
And this is coming from someone who I myself don't like getting much constellations either, but I know that that's just my preference rather than what's actually optimal. Let's talk about Raiden as well. So when I talked about this XILONEN stuff on stream, a lot of people were unsure about why I've been hyping up ChesseBurgers replacing Kazuha for Raiden, also Cloran teams, and I hype up ChesseBurgers, but I'm having concerns about XILONEN. The thing is, why I think ChesseBurgers works amazingly with these electro DPSs is very specific. I've honestly always thought ChesseBurgers was super optimized to work well with Raiden, and if you're interested, I actually talked about this in my ChesseBurgers video a few weeks ago. To summarize it, there's basically three main factors that I think of. Number one is opportunity cost, which is that Electro teams don't have as much to lose by being forced to play an Overload team compared to what a Pyro DPS has to lose. Like if you're playing Hu Tao, Arlecchino, Linny. With Raiden Hyper teams, you're mostly just caring about raw damage, in which case ChesseBurgers just brings more buffs than Kazuha. But in comparison with a Pyro DPS, to play Overload, you have to lose something like Vape, you have to lose grouping when a character like Arlecchino and Linny can be freely swapped in and out to benefit from that grouping. Linny, especially with grouping, has AoE nukes, but without grouping, he feels like a single target DPS. Also VV on your grouping character. If you can switch out those Pyro characters in and out, it's not hard to reapply debuffs and keep those debuffs relevant. There's also shields that you have to sacrifice in an Overload team, unless you want to be forced to play someone like Toma or Beidou. They don't really compare to Zhongli though. Another aspect which I just touched on, which is that you can't switch out of Raiden or Chlorand. These characters lose their infusion when you switch them out. They have low uptime, and Raiden especially with her huge downtime, and this makes Kazuha's grouping less effective. You basically only get grouping at the start of your rotation, something like that, and this makes Kazuha's grouping less effective. But Raiden doesn't need that much grouping at the start, because her burst has massive AoE and her charge attacks have good AoE too. Someone like Chlorand does benefit from Kazuha's grouping a lot, but as you know, Chlorand has this issue with her uptime, and since she suffers from not being able to switch out without making the uptime even more worse than it normally is, she ends up equally benefiting from ChesseBurgers' perma buffs and debuffs. Lastly, if you were thinking about adding XILONEN into Raiden teams to replace ChesseBurgers, then I have extreme doubts that would be an upgrade. There are tons of comparisons like energy, field time, buff comparisons, but let's be honest, you can't expect a more universal character like XILONEN to compete with ChesseBurgers at the role ChesseBurgers was specifically designed to do.
I mean, that's fine and all, like, design-wise, but, like, he kind of is competitive. Like, she's giving... In a team like this, she's doing pretty much the same thing. If anything, the fact that you're not reliant on re-triggering Overload makes her more versatile. Rose gives way more buffs than XILONEN. Does she? 40% res shred and 40% attack versus 36% res shred and 40% damage percent. These are very similar buffs. At C6, I mean, yeah, at C6. How many people do you think actually have C6 ChesseBurgers? Isn't there fucking data for this somewhere? I would be heavily surprised if it's anything close to like 5% of the player base. Amber says 23%? Really? That sounds very wrong. Where's the data for this? Where do you find it? 23% of ChesseBurgers havers? Oh, that might be it, yeah. That might make sense. That's different, though. Make a poll in chat. I guess we can, yeah. What constellation is your ChesseBurgers? C6? Under C6? What ChesseBurgers? Banded 32 chatters with C6. True. Okay, so it seems to be about 15% of my viewers, which is a group that is a lot more likely to have C6 servers than the average player, I would say. People that are involved in Genshin enough to be watching a Theory Crafter stream are a lot more likely. Less whales here. If you think that the proportion of whales here is lower than the proportion of whales in the general population, buddy. If you're interacting with the community at all, you'll have an incredibly warped perception of how many people are whales. The amount of whales, it's such a minuscule portion of the actual player base that are whales. But pretty much every whale is active in the community in some way, shape, or form. Whereas people that aren't whales, it's a lot more split. See, so whales are very overrepresented in the community. Like, significantly so. Anyways.
Let's be honest, you can't expect a more universal character like XILONEN to compete with ChesseBurgers at the role.
I have stats. 18% of people. That's from... That's sample size from people that submitted after clearing floor 12 of Abyss, isn't it? Like, this is Abyss data. You have to understand how warped these statistics are going to be by things like that. Yeah, there's massive sampling bias for this. But it's still 17%. Yeah, which is not that high to begin with. And in reality, it's going to be a lot lower. I escaped election Twitter just to get into another sampling bias and methodology discussion. Rip bozo. Anyways, all of this to say, a comparison between C6 ChesseBurgers and XILONEN is definitely worth talking about. But you shouldn't assume that ChesseBurgers will be C6 when you're just comparing ChesseBurgers to XILONEN. It should be something that you actively mention if you're comparing C6. If you're just saying ChesseBurgers is better than XILONEN, like, fucking specify that you mean C6 ChesseBurgers, you know? Like, that's not what I'm gonna understand otherwise.
whole chefs was specifically designed to do. You might even think about replacing the whole team, playing something like a double hydro team. But yeah, anyone that's played Jean in this team, trying to buff with both hydro and electro swirls in a team like this, yeah, I can't imagine that's going to be any more realistic with XILONEN trying to get both hydro and electro crystallizes. We can also,
the thing is, you don't need to get both. Like, getting both is good because that's what the damage bonus is reliant on. But unlike a character like Kazuha, she's still useful even if she doesn't trigger a reaction on the right element. The res shred is not conditional on triggering crystallize of a specific element. The res shred happens no matter what. It's only the damage from the set that's reliant on getting the crystallize. So you get punished a lot less for not doing double swirl setups with double crystallize setups or whatever.
also talk about quicken teams. Quicken teams like Chlorand or Yaimiko or Kuching. Now these can be teams where you could be comparing XILONEN and Kazuha, but it's honestly almost impossible for me to imagine XILONEN improving these. First of all, optimal quicken teams, something like this, are generally harder to play for the average player considering a lack of healers and shielders. So as we know, comfort wise, at least in terms of usage, that
I mean, XILONEN is a healer.
Average player is using someone like Zhongli for the shield. By the way, she won't even be able to buff the Dendro focused quicken teams like Tainari or Al-Haytham, since obviously Dendro doesn't react with Geo, but that's another story. And damage wise, at least in these teams, it's not just about Kazuha's buffs, but it's also about his grouping and personal damage, which his personal damage
fair. That's a
is
completely
most
fair point.
relevant in quicken teams. Characters like Chlorand, Yaimiko, Fischl, Kuching, they really benefit from Kazuha's unmatched grouping and him being able to basically spam his grouping off cooldown. And yeah, because of his high EM and his electro absorption with his skill and burst, he genuinely does pretty good sub DPS damage in quicken teams. Even if, like, generally speaking, XILONEN was balanced to be competitive in other teams support wise, utility wise with Kazuha. With these quicken teams where Kazuha actually does relevant damage, it's hard to imagine XILONEN is also balanced to match Kazuha's damage.
I think I get this point, but I think that when it comes to quicken teams, most people don't feel comfortable playing teams without any form of defensive utility. And XILONEN being a healer means that she's not going to try, like, she doesn't need to replace Kazuha one-to-one, right? The reality is that a lot of people just will not play a team like this that doesn't have a healer, and they'll instead replace Kazuha for Jean or replace Nahida for Baiju or Yao Yao. And between Jean and XILONEN in a team like this, XILONEN is better. Between Kazuha Yao Yao versus XILONEN Nahida, I think it's very reasonable to lean more towards the XILONEN Nahida. Although I don't think it's as clear cut. But yeah.
Damage potential. So overall, I don't see her thriving in quicken teams either, especially because if you do need defensive utility, you can even do something like Kirara like this, and Kirara was free. Although, to give her credit, I guess people could play XILONEN for her healing in a team like this maybe, but I don't think, at least DPS wise, it's going to be competitive. And also,
I mean, obviously a team that's running, I mean, it's, yes, if you compare a team that is sacrificing damage for healing to a team that doesn't have healing, most of the time the team that is sacrificing damage for healing is going to be worse, but again, that's not a particularly fair comparison to make.
Maybe, but I don't think, at least DPS wise, it's going to be competitive. And also, let's talk about vape teams. I think there's always been this unintentional thing in Genshin, which I don't know if the developers anticipated this, but it's how Kazuha absorbs Bennett's pyro whenever Kazuha is under the burst, and how that would be the key in double buffing in vape teams. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let me just show you quickly. So how you can keep Hydro on an enemy, set up Bennett's burst, and then you can easily double swirl with Kazuha. That interaction allows Kazuha Bennett teams to work well where other teammates can't work as effectively. We've all tried it. The point is, XILONEN's buffs, at least the scroll set, because the Akuma character needs to do reactions, XILONEN still needs to do similar interactions to what we've been trying to do with other non-Kazuha characters. I believe she still needs to generate both Hydro and Pyro crystallized shards to get her full buffs. And like we're saying, a lot of characters who aren't Kazuha can actually struggle with multi-buffing like this.
That's another thing. Like, that's fair, but also the fact that she still gives pretty big buffs without it is also very relevant. It's not that relevant in a team like this, sure, but if you were to play double Hydro instead of double Pyro, right, with Yelan Sing To, with Hu Tao here, XILONEN is still shredding Pyro res, which is something that your animal unit just won't do unless you're doing some weird Blood Blossom swirl bullshit, which isn't real.
If you want a good comparison, it's kind of like if you've ever tried to use Archaic Petra Zhongli to buff Ganyu in Ganyu Melt. It's just not a good time. And what's the likelihood another Geo would be? Yeah, sure, you probably can get her res shred, but you might not be able to get her full package. Lastly, and this is potentially the biggest killer in terms of concerns, as we know, the scroll set is insanely strong. It's kind of cheesy actually. It basically can make any Natlan character a support with big buffs, big 40% damage buffs. And XILONEN has the res shred in her base kit, plus this huge damage buff when using the scroll set. This is why people have been drawing comparisons to Zhongli or Kazuha, who also provide buffs and provide res shred.
Thank you,
but
Zhongli and Kazuha.
The thing is, this set doesn't stack. Now, what if this highly
supposed to put Milani instead of Naya? Okay.
anticipated Pyro Archon, who is also a Natlan character, might lose this set? Say, for example, if she replaces Xiangling in a team like this, well then, XILONEN is losing half her value. And a lot of team ideas that we've talked about could appreciate a Natlan Xiangling or other teammates who could be replaced.
I think this is a very good point, and probably the most relevant point so far. The set doesn't stack, which means in order for her to be able to actually be good, you need to not have any other character that relies on the set to be good.
In the future with a Natlan version. And if XILONEN is not guaranteed to be a huge
Moew will definitely have her own set, maybe.
upgrade, including the scroll set, and then in the future if you remove the scroll set, then that might be something you might end up regretting. Obviously this concern is just speculation, but I think it's very relevant to at least consider. Now let's get into a bit more positives. I have been thinking about it, and I think Mualani teams seem like the teams where I'm most confident XILONEN will be a consistent upgrade, and that's because of two main reasons. Number one, I've always found it tough to slot in an ideal healer or shielder into Mualani teams whilst keeping a good amount of team buffs. Like if you want maximum buffs in your team, you usually have to play some sort of shieldless team. Maybe something like this or something like this. And if you want to play Farina, then you have to slot in a less effective buffer like Baiju. And XILONEN should be ideal here. Mualani also has issues finding teammates with long-lasting buffs, like Kazuha's buffs expiring very quickly. And that's something XILONEN can definitely help with. And so I'll be very happy to pull XILONEN to buff my Mualani. However, I still do have a few concerns, and you might not care about these ones, but these are factors that might make XILONEN not perfect for Mualani. And the main one is just that how godly these current teams are at setting up quick. This is an example at the moment. It's not easy to play, but the setup time is godly. You can basically get 3-second setup times here, and by comparison, XILONEN with 5-star burst animations, you're probably taking almost 3 seconds on just her.
You don't need to use her burst in a team like this. Her burst is only really useful if you're playing Farina and you need the healing. It's still slower than Sucrose for sure, because Sucrose is the GOAT, but not that much.
Let alone the rest of your team. That means if you're someone who cares
the burst only does healing,
about speed, your old team might have already killed the enemy before your XILONEN team has even finished setting up. The other issue is similar to my Neuvillette issue, which is that so far, Moew vertical investment has just been proven to be broken. I have C0, there's people who have C1 and they just completely gap me in terms of damage, let alone if you have her C2. And these upgrades have just been proven to be way ahead of any 5-star support. A team like this with just 4-star teammates has been absolutely ridiculous. Even with just C1 or C2 Moew, it just feels like a complete whale team. And not only the C1 and C2, I guess if you're whaling, you can just keep going further. And this is kind of just how a lot of hyper carry DPSs, the new DPSs are like. And it can just be hard to take smaller support upgrade comparisons too serious when investing in your DPS is just simply more DPS. Now, having said all this, here is where I could see her being more stronger than I'm saying. And as we know, you can't compare 1.0 characters in gear compared to 5.0 characters in gear. And it's likely she will have cracked constellations, maybe a cracked signature weapon. So if you're someone who wants to invest in that, then yeah, sure, that could be a different conversation. But then again, like I said, the vertical investment in your DPS could also be a factor. But anyway, that is still an upside for her. And another upside, and I know people are gonna mention it in the comments, but some people don't care about vertical investment and you'd rather keep pulling new characters. And yeah, of course, I always advocate pulling for whatever you like, pulling for what you want, but you have to understand that
unless what you like is Mika,
that angle is just a completely different argument than if you want to talk about DPS, and that was what most of this video was about. Anyway, those are just my first impressions. Again, I'm just speculating here based off of the reveal. I could be right or wrong. I just wanted to get this first impressions out because I think there's a good chance I could be right. And I thought with a lot of hype going on, it might be important for some of you guys to hear that. But again, I do think she is going to be strong. It's just that I think it's unlikely she's like, oh my god, power creep, buffs to dozens of teams, one of the best characters in the game. I think that level of hype could backfire. Anyway, the most important thing is just to wait until the character actually releases, and then everybody can test for themselves. Just be.
Why did Mika catch a stray? It wasn't a stray. It was targeted. He's been in my crossfire this whole time. Like it was not a stray. Do not get me wrong. That shawl was for Mika and for him alone.
Be cautious of hype. That's what I'm saying. And yeah, thanks for watching.
I thought I was the biggest Mika hater. No. It was me. I think she's the best unit since Farina. Maybe? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, okay. The whole perspective that, like, she's not really likely to improve a pre-existing good team more than getting a constellation, I think that's fair, and that's probably worth mentioning. I do think that, Jamie, you make the assumption that people already have good teams. And you didn't allow for the possibility, like, it wasn't mentioned in your video a single time. What about people that don't have Kazuha? What about people that don't have those other options that are good? Telling people just wait for a rerun when there's a character that does very similar things that's coming out now isn't necessarily good. right? What if you need Kazuha on your other side? Like, what if your favorite team is international, and you refuse to put Kazuha in any other team, and you're looking for a unit to put in your, I don't know, aggravate team or some shit. Although I guess you'd kind of want to put Sucrose, but maybe aggravate's not the best example because Sucrose is kind of the goat. But yeah, like, I don't think your point of view is like invalid. I think it's a valuable one, but I think you. Thank you. I think you're a little bit too focused on your own perspective and not open enough to other perspectives. Like the language you use is like, oh, like this is objectively what's happening. Like none of the things you said were like factually wrong, but it definitely suggested a certain, like, this is the right point of view, you know? Definitely had that vibe a little bit. Where's the new pet on the pet tier list? I like it so far. It's kind of the goat. Now watch TGS for the complete opposite side. Yeah, I guess we can do that.
Guys, XILONEN has been officialized today on stream, and so this is my full guide on how she works, how you should build her, and what her best teams are. Let's go. First of all, as you probably already know, XILONEN is a 5-star Geo's Lord character.
Okay.
Second playstyle, that applies when fewer than 2 other mixers change element from Geo.
Why is
this
this
will
in a
commonly
guide?
apply in a mono Geo team with 3 Geo characters, for example, or teams like Xianyun Plunge with a Geo character. In this case, her kit won't have supportive effects, but rather it will focus on having XILONEN deal damage herself, by giving her damage bonuses instead of reducing the opponent's resistance and making her burst deal more damage instead of healing. Moreover, she gets Geo-infused normal and plunge attacks as skill of defense, so she can be used as an on-field DPS on traditional mono Geo compositions that include Goro. This looks great, because it gives her an alternative to her already amazing sounding supportive kit, but the thing is, it's just that her damage output is pretty shit. Her multipliers are okay-ish at best, and she doesn't get nearly enough offensive buffs from her own kit to compete with a high-tier meta DPS. Honestly, it seems more like a playstyle shoehorned into her kit for competition purposes, like they also did with Shiori, for example, with her own field play, rather than a really good thing she has going for her. Going back to her supportive playstyle now, the thing I've heard the most is whether or not she power creeps Kazuha. My answer is yes and no. The first thing I will say is that these characters are very similar in terms of what they provide offensively, in a funny way even. Kazuha is a character that provides damage bonuses for teammates through his kit, and gets to reduce resistance on opponents through the very decent Veneer set. XILONEN is the opposite. She reduces resistance through her kit, and she gets team-wide damage bonus utility through the Natran supportive set, which makes her give a full 40% bonuses to the elements she triggers reactions with, in this case Crystallites. On top of that, however, XILONEN is also healing, so in terms of just raw kit contribution, it does seem XILONEN is bringing more than Kazuha to the table here. However, practically speaking, it's more complex than that. Kazuha still has things going for him, namely his grouping utility and his damage output, both of which become very relevant in AoE scenarios. With Hoyo introducing a wave of small opponents even in boss stages, it does feel like Kazuha's positional impact is becoming even more noticeable nowadays. Plus, with how present Bennett is in the meta and on teams in general, even though Kazuha can heal the team himself, it isn't necessarily a loss as a whole. On the flip side, the XILONEN's technical advantages mostly come from how easy it is to apply her support for the rest of the team. This comes in handy mostly in multi-elemental teams like Vaporites, Melt, quicken, and to a lesser extent freeze or electrocharge, where it can be hard for the anime character to sword the right element. XILONEN doesn't have this issue, and this makes these teams much more consistent and playable, especially the melt and vaporize teams, since the gauges are really tricky there. Moreover, while XILONEN's healing utility can be diminished if she ends up having Bennett on her teams in some cases, the fact she has it by herself is still very valuable, as she single-handedly allows for the presence of Furina on her teams that way. Kazuha cannot do this, and this goes to XILONEN's credit. So, we're definitely looking at a unit that can have Kazuha-like damage buffing impact while being more flexible and versatile in most cases, and only really losing out on the grouping and some damage output. This will shake the team's meta in many ways, but before I talk about that, let me remind you that if you enjoy my content but you haven't subbed yet, please consider doing so because it really makes me notice your support. So, while I just now focus on how she compares to Kazuha damage impact wise, let me just say that the biggest difference she'll make in the meta will be on teams where they can be used together. The perfect example here is Neuvillette, a character that doesn't exactly have many supports, and so even a character like Zhongli can be used as a best-in-slot for him offensively speaking. Frankly put, XILONEN swallows Zhongli completely in terms of damage output for the team, and through her own healing, she also allows for faster and more consistent Furina Fanfare stacks generation. The only thing the team is losing here is the interruption resistance, which can be annoying if your Neuvillette is Constellation 0, but if it's Constellation 1, this variation becomes a no-brainer best team in the game contender. Secondarily, even in cases where she can't be used with Kazuha, she fits very well on teams that just had lesser offensive supports previously, so Mulannin teams, Namiya teams, Itto teams. Mulannin in particular benefits a lot, because she was probably the least supported character in the game, and XILONEN is looking to be a game-changing addition for her damage-wise, since she also sort of enables Furina on her teams. Granted you're using Xianling here, there should be enough pyro application on the team for both Furina and Mulannin to vape semi-consistently at least, so the outlook...
That's a little sus. Okay, having played some Furina Mulannin teams, semi-consistently is generous, I would say. It's quite generous.
Is pretty great. Namiya and Itto just got one of the biggest jumps in damage they could have possibly gotten as well. You can't play a triple Geo team in these cases, or XILONEN support won't activate, but that's not a big problem. Honestly, I've been hearing for a long time how Geo was missing a Kazuha, and they just might have gotten one here, at least in terms of raw damage output. Then, multi-element teams like Melt Grizzly, Melt Ganyu, Double Hydra Raiden. As I mentioned before, XILONEN instantly reducing resistance for all elements on the team really comes in handy. In this specific case, especially for the Melt teams, where swirling cryo for the anime characters is often impossible due to how dominant the pyro application can be on the team. As far as Raiden goes, there is a good chance this might end up being the best Raiden team period, at least at Constellation 0. Then also a lot of other uses, like for example her on Arlecchino teams instead of Xianling to further increase Arlecchino's damage output on Mono Pyro teams specifically, and also many other cases where she can be at least considered as side grade to Kazuha damage wise, since her offensive support is roughly equivalent. Overall, a fantastic addition to the meta, and probably one of the most straightforward buffs to existing teams we've ever seen in Genshin. Now, builds wise, she's a character that wants to be built with energy recharge and defense primarily, although it's only essential if you want her...
Breath of the Wild music?
That wants to be built with the energy we've ever seen in Genshin. Now, builds wise, she's a character that wants to be built with energy recharge and defense primarily, although it's only essential if you want her to heal on the team. In cases where you pair her with another healer like Bennett, this is not needed. Anyway, even if you want...
What? Is it? Huh. It sounds a lot like the Guardian music from Breath of the Wild.
Use her burst every rotation, her energy requirements are not really massive, since she generates a decent amount of particles for herself, and the burst itself only has a 60 energy cost. Artifact sets wise, no brainer really, just give her the Nathan supported set. Giving her any other set would be akin to giving any set other than the Verdicent Veneer to Kazuha, which is just crazy 99% of the cases. Talking about the weapons now, I already talked about her signature in the last video I made, but since then it's gotten changed, so it's good to revisit it. This signature weapon provides team-wide damage bonuses on top of increasing her defense by a lot.
Why is this in Italian and this in English?
Maximizing her healing as a result, and some elemental damage bonus for herself too. Last time, the team-wide damage bonus was higher than it is now, and it made the weapon her best since not enough.
That's Spanish? Is it? I assumed it was Italian, because TGS is Italian. I don't know, it's a Latin language. Who cares, man? It's Portuguese. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is.
In all situations. Now it's a bit different, as she still
To Brazil? How am I gonna use Twitter if I go to Brazil though? Racist Zajef? Yeah. It's so racist to assume that the Italian person is browsing a website in Italian and not in Spanish. Oh no. What have I done? Ah, fuck. Ah, shit. Ah, fuck. What? Unwatchable streamer.
has another supportive option in Freedom Sworn that is perfectly usable. Freedom Sworn gives attack percent plus normal and charge attack damage bonuses, which is not as versatile as the general damage bonuses the signature provides, but in the scenario where you have an on-fielder that can fully take advantage of both of those buffs, like Arlecchino, Freedom Sworn ends up being better as of right now in terms of raw damage buffing. Alternatively, for free-to-play options, you can just use Favonius to take care of her energy requirements, or the not uncraftable too, since it gives a lot of defense and that's good to maximize their healing capabilities. Craftable for free-to-play op ends up being better as of right now in terms of raw damage buffing. Alternatively, for free-to-play options, you can just use Favonius as of right now.
Okay, I assume this is a vape team, right? Or maybe not. Is it really? Is it really better? Frames are really better than Sig for this? Huh.
Now in terms of raw damage buffing. Alternatively, for free-to-play options, you can just use Favonius to take care of her energy
Fav my goat.
requirements, or the not
Wait, whoa.
Alternatively, for free-to-play
Why is
options,
there
you
a
can just use
cursor
Favonius
here?
to take care.
Huh? Does Blood have fucking editing rights for this website, or like what's going on here? Firefox moment? Oh, is it? Caught!
Care of her energy requirements, or the not uncraftable.
Chat, what do you guys feel about the fact that I have a Microsoft Edge tab open right now? I don't know why, but when I open a document, a PDF document, it defaults to Microsoft Edge. I don't really get it. I don't know why. Close it? I don't want to close it because I want to keep this. You can change? I don't know how. I will if I don't know. We'll figure it out eventually. It's your computer settings, but my default app is not Edge. Like when I click on a link on Discord, it opens in Chrome. So it's a different setting, and I don't know what setting it is, but yeah, I don't know. In Windows settings, hidden among the garbage. Yeah, that's kind of the problem. I don't want to browse the garbage. You're a PDF viewer? It's probably, yeah, that's probably it.
too, since it gives a lot of defense and that's good to maximize their healing capabilities. Now, for her constellations, they're pretty great. Some of the best supportive constellations we've ever gotten all around. Her constellation 1 makes her give the active character some interruption resistance, assuming she's being used in the supportive version of her kit. This sounds amazing at a glance, but interruption resistance she gives is much worse than even Sinjot's ranged wards, and is just equivalent to what characters like Sino and Ayato get.
Really? It's not infinite interruption res? But that's all it gives. What?
Much worse than even Sinjot's ranged wards, and is
That's awful!
just equivalent to what characters like Sino and Ayato get normally. It's still nice, but definitely not a replacement to a shield. Her Constellation 2 got buffed since last week, so just like the signature weapon, it's nice to revisit it. It makes her give statistical bonuses to her teammates that differ depending on the element. This ranges from not impressive, like giving attack percent to Pyro characters, to really good, like giving 60% damage bonus to Geo characters. As a whole, the Constellation 2 can buff her teammates by even 20% in the best case scenario, something that puts it roughly on Ahita's Constellation 2 level. But it's worth mentioning that statistical buffs are more variable in impact compared to other types of offensive utility. For example,
I am very interested in the Electro buff, honestly. 14-second right-in rotations. Or I guess 12-second right-in rotations, maybe. Perhaps.
HP build Novolette will get a worse increase from Shilonen's buffs than a low HP build 1 would. The same type of saturation won't typically apply to things like Nahida's Constellation 2, as hers simply reduces the defense on opponents. Constellation 2 also makes her always active the Geo element mixers on her skill, meaning she gets to reduce Geo resistance even on mono Geo teams. Overall, I would say Shilonen is a pretty amazing character, and honestly in the future you might regret not polling for her if you skip her now. This is the type of respect you will mostly just expect Archon supports to receive, but here she is, I guess, beating the odds. And I'm done for today. If you enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe.
Interesting second perspective to get. I don't really feel the need to do a weapon calc for her. I don't really think I even want to cover her as a carry. Like, if you're playing her as a carry, you're not playing her optimally, and like, that's fine, but it's not really what I'm interested in. Maybe I'll make a video about it once she gets released, but I don't really think it's particularly worth mentioning in the pre-release. But before we do that, let's do another run of Abyss. Let's do. I at least want to do one every day. So I want to play a ChesseBurgers team for sure on one side, and then what do I do on the other? I feel like it's been a long time since I've played a Beto team. And now that I have ChesseBurgers, I have more options for her. Slongly. What the fuck? Did I have a stroke, chat? I'm guessing you mean Hu Tao Yelan, Zhongli, Farina. XILONEN. Wait. There's like 5.5 characters. There's 5 characters in Xi Jinping. I'm confused. Oh! Zhongli, Hu Tao, Hydro, XILONEN. I see. Yeah, it should work. I don't think Farina's enough Hydro by herself. So, anyways, where is... There he is. What do I even want to put him on? Yeah, whatever. Okay. TF Bennett. I have him at C6. It doesn't really work anymore. I would use TF Bennett otherwise, though. Okay, so I have the team for the probably second side. Or maybe first side, I guess. I'm gonna have to deal with this motherfucker, though. Ugh. That's fine. I am the light bringer. Sure, is a good second side. Yeah, but it's a Beto team. I don't want to play it on a side that has literally no AoE. You know? Not too long ago. What do I even want? What do I want to do? I guess I could play Milani. And a bed snap later. What team do I want to play? I don't want to just play the Baiju team. Fuck. Might not have enough ER. Alright. Let's do this. Let's see how cringe things are gonna be. Oh, age. I wasn't positioned properly. My bad. I don't want to talk about it. How the fuck did that miss, man? Oh, whatever. Dude, what? How did that... I triggered overload on him like 5 times. Like, what the fuck was that, man? He just didn't get knocked back? Fucking bullshit. The hyper armor garbage. Cringe. Whatever. Alright, we're good. Yeah, good enough. I don't need to ult again. Was a bit annoying, but that's okay. That's the only annoying chamber. Fuck. Well, that's fuck. I guess it worked out.
The eternal oasis. Bloom as the flowers in Gurabard.
How did it target the fucking animal instead of the... whatever. Oh wait, I forgot about this. Wait, how did I forget about this? Well, it'll be fine. How did I forget about that? Like, am I an idiot, chat? God, I think I'm an idiot. Well, that's fine. Impromptu version team, yeah. It worked out! It worked out, okay? It's fine. Fight fire with fire and water with water. Exactly. You get it. Give me the energy! Give me the energy! Okay. That's actually fine. Doesn't matter if he moves. It does not matter if he moves. I mean, as expected, you're not gonna see the best results playing a Beto team in single target, but that's fine. Was it Chauffeur C6? No. Oh, fuck off. My 5 didn't proc. Maj. No crit. Well, that worked out. 400k. That's pretty good. I guess this blessing is kind of the goat, isn't it? Kanish looks like a protagonist? What do you mean? I guess he does, actually. Chat, I saw Auron's design for the first time. Like, actually took a look at it yesterday. God. Fucking Jesus Christ. Well, What are they doing? Like, who did they fire? Who did they hire? Something's wrong. He looks like he's trying so hard to look cool. Bro, why does my Genshin character have skinny ripped jeans? Like, what the fuck is going on here? I need an explainer, please. Cause I don't get it. Oron and Chaska should marry and leave the game. Okay, I feel like it's completely unreasonable to compare them. Like, sure, Chaska's, like, whatever, but, like... Are you really saying that they're just as bad? Have you seen Oron? Have you seen him? Oron Genshin. Where's the fucking? I guess it's in the live stream. Wait, he's a 4-star? Is that real? Huh. This is the one. Dude. Dude. What? Like, who did this? Hot take, I really enjoy Lolly's design. I mean, I don't really care about it. Do people not like it? To me, this looks like generic Honkai character. I don't have strong feelings either way. This I fucking hate, though. He has homophobic eyes, true. What? He has heterochromia. Is that a good way to say it? Is heterochromia something that you have? It kind of makes it sound like a disease. He has heterochromatic eyes. I have homochromia. Well, that's crazy. Me too. Although, my eyes used to be, like, borderline blue. Like, you probably wouldn't be able to tell from looking at me now. When I was young, I was like, omega blonde and I had blue eyes. And as I grew up, my hair turned brown and my eyes turned green. But like I was omega blonde. Let me pull up a picture. This is one of my favorite pictures. Let me open it in a new tab. Actually, no. I just open image. Yeah. Yeah. Actually. Anyways. Yeah, this is this is baby Zajef. I don't know if I've shown this one before. It's not exactly baby, but this is young Zajef. That's me. What the fuck happened, man? What playing Genshin does? No, that's not. Yes, it is. I can show you progress pictures if you want. Actually, I can't be bothered. It's a pain in the ass because I want to make sure I don't dox myself, so I have to make sure that there's no like private information in any of the pictures. That's a stock image? It's not. Explain how you went from blonde to black hair. I don't have black hair. It's just like dark brown. I can pull up an elementary school Zajef picture. Oh, that's a good one. This is elementary school Zajef at soccer practice. Yeah, this one's a really good picture as well. God. Looking at these old pictures makes me appreciate how good my dad was at taking pictures. This is late elementary school Zajef on a ski trip. Fucking 4K camera. My dad's biggest main hobby was taking pictures, and he took wedding pictures as a hobby. God, I don't want to show you guys pictures of teenage Zajef. It's too embarrassing. God, Okay, this one's not that embarrassing. Okay, wait. This is teenage Zajef. Practicing guitar. This is when I started learning guitar. That's a sick guitar. Yeah, it's my cousin's guitar. It's a fucking insane guitar. And there's a few prom pics as well. This is maybe the best one. Glasses go crazy, yeah. My prom fit was pretty solid, honestly. What happened? Genshin Impact, man. Do you have Nick photos? I probably do somewhere, but not here. This is pretty much just pictures that were taken by my dad. Yeah, my dad has a lot of pictures. Like, yeah. 4,800 photos uploaded that are good enough to make it into his, like, public profile or whatever. A lot of them are pictures of other professors. Let it burn under my skin. Yeah. And then there's a bunch of pictures of my family. Anyways. What was your dad's main job? He was a university professor. He taught biology. By the time he took his, I don't know what you call it, fucking sick leave or whatever, for cancer, he was the dean of science. Did you not hear anyone? No. My dad passed away, what's 5-6 years ago now? 5? Fair to hear that. It is what it is. Yeah, it's... The thing I feel the most when I think about my dad isn't like sadness, it's regret. I wish I wasn't as rebellious and fucking cringe when he fell sick. I wish I spent more time with him. I distanced myself from him a lot when he got sick. That was probably really hard for him. And looking back, thinking of all the stuff I missed out on because I distanced myself from him really fills me with regret. Why did you do it? Hey, thank you for the raid at like the worst possible moment. Pog. It's really difficult watching your dad like change because of brain cancer. Watching his behavior and mood get more erratic. Watching him start to forget things. Struggle to, like, even understand who you are. It's very difficult. And looking back on it, I think it would have been better to spend time with him anyways. But I also, like, I don't feel like I can really blame myself that much because it's such a difficult thing to do. It's yeah. You were young, didn't know much. I mean, I was, but I wasn't that young. Taking care of someone with Alzheimer's / brain cancer is such a traumatic experience, yeah. Like, the last memory of my dad being alive that I have, he didn't even recognize me. And that fucking sucks. I try not to think about that when I remember him. And my dad was really an like outstanding man. He not only was he like very successful, he was also like loved. Right? He was a professor, and the amount of students and like coworkers that showed up to his funeral was staggering. Like we had to fucking join 2 funeral like rooms, whatever, together because there weren't enough seats in one. So the funeral happened like in a corner with like two rooms coming out of it, 2 halls or whatever. And like it really made me realize just how much of an outstanding man my dad was. And I wish I'd spent more time to get to know that side of him. Knowing that one man has touched so many people must be inspiring. Yeah, I mean, I've always liked teaching, but I didn't realize that I wanted to do that with my life, I think, until the funeral. And I remember I wasn't planning on giving a speech during the funeral, but I ended up giving one anyways, just because I was so overwhelmed by the amount of love that was in that in those rooms. But like, even with all that, like, respect and that love, it's still mostly regret that remains at the end of the day. I really wish I got to know that side of him more. Instead of escaping and coping in unhealthy ways. It is what it is. Anyways, this is a great time to move on to the XILONEN pre-release, don't you guys think? What's your favorite memory of him, to end on a positive note? My favorite memory of him is not really that important or interesting. But I don't know how old I was. I must have been like 3 or 4. Just old enough to form memories. But I remember a specific walk I went on with him, where I started getting tired, and he decided to put me on his shoulders, and it felt like I was on top of the world. It's such a small thing, but when I think about being happy with my dad, that's the first thing I think about. I can't fucking do the XILONEN pre-release now. I was fine until you asked me that question. Fuck. Do more Soul, look at the new shitty anime or something. I don't know, man. Thank you for the 5 gifted. Drink water. Okay. Let's do it. Everyone say hi to YouTube. Hello, beautiful people, and welcome. Hi, to the XILONEN pre-release analysis. I want to apologize because this pre-release is coming out much later than it usually does. I usually try to get the pre-release recorded before the live stream. However, in XILONEN's case, I thought that there was really not that much to say, so I ended up procrastinating on it because I felt like it was kind of a whatever thing to do. And so now we are like 2 days after the live stream, or 1 day after the live stream. I don't know. Days are hard. But we're recording it now. Woohoo! Okay, so let's get right into it. Base stats: 12,405 base HP, 275 base attack, 930 base defense, defense percent ascension. None of this matters too much. I talk about base stats, usually talking about the ascension stat and defensive stats. Defensive stats can matter if you're playing a carry, because if you have really low base defensive stats, it can be a lot harder to end up dying to a slight breeze. However, in XILONEN's case, as we're going to see later, you can either play her as a carry or as a support. But if you do play her as a carry, she's a defense scaler, which means she's going to have a lot of defense anyways. On top of her high base defense, she's going to be tanky enough that it's not really going to matter. And then she has defense ascension. So let's get right into her kit. Normal attack, perform 3 rapid strikes, whatever. We have a special normal attack. However, that special normal attack is activated by the skill. So we're going to start by looking at the skill, and then we'll get back to the normal attack. Elemental skill, Yoel's Scratch. Let the rhythms of passion resound throughout the land. XILONEN switches to high-speed combat blading gear and rushes forward a certain distance before dealing Night Soul-aligned geo damage based on her defense. After using this, XILONEN will gain 45 Night Soul points and enter the Night Soul Blessing state. In this state, she will shift to the Blade Roller mode. Source samples. XILONEN has 3 samplers with her that can generate different soundscapes based on her other party members' elemental types, decreasing nearby opponents' corresponding elemental resistance while active. The initial recorded source sample within each sampler will be Geo, and for each party member who is Pyro, Hydro, Cryo, or Electro, 1 Geo sampler will change to that of the corresponding element. While XILONEN is in the Night Soul's Blessing state, the Geo source sample she carries will always be active. After unlocking her passive talent, however the hell that's pronounced, Netotilizly echoes, XILONEN can trigger said passive talent's effect to regenerate Night Soul points for herself. When her Night Soul points hit the maximum, she will consume all her Night Soul points and activate the 3 source samples she has for 15 seconds. When the source samples are active, nearby opponents' corresponding elemental resistance will decrease. Source sample effects of the same elemental type cannot stack. XILONEN can trigger these effects when off-field. Night Soul's Blessing. Continuously consume Night Soul points. When these points are depleted or if used again, this Night Soul's Blessing state will end. The state has the following traits. Switches to Blade Roller mode, increasing XILONEN's movement speed and climbing speed, and she can perform high-speed leaps in Ocelot form while climbing. XILONEN's Night Soul's Blessing has the following restrictions. When in this state, XILONEN's Night Soul points have a 9-second time limit. After this time limit passes, her Night Soul points will immediately expire. After XILONEN's Night Soul points have expired, she will no longer be able to generate Night Soul points. Okay, that's a whole lot of fucking yapping. Let's summarize it in a way that is easy to understand with the help of the editors. I'm gonna use Paint, but editors are gonna make it look better. So, similarly to Molani, when she uses her skill, she enters Night Soul, and she gets a Night Soul bar, and she also gets 3 thingies here. It's actually very similar visually. Wait, what the fuck is going on with my cam? That's weird. Okay, I don't know why it did that, but... Anyways, it's something that looks very similar, but that doesn't function the same way. Molani's thing, so I'm gonna... We're doing arts and crafts right now, don't disturb me. Okay. So, she also has a thingy like this. And then on top of that, she has 3 little triangles. Like this. By default, these are Geo. However, the elements of these will change based on your party composition. So for example, we're gonna use Kachina as a stand-in for XILONEN. If my whole team is Geo, they will all stay Geo. If I replace Geo characters for Animal or Dendro characters, like this, they will still stay Geo. However, if you use characters of other elements, so Pyro, Hydro, Cryo, or Electro, which are the elements that are swirlable or crystallizable, it's easy to remember. Let's say I do Molani and Neuvillette, or Farina and Neuvillette. I now have 2 Hydro characters, so 2 of these are going to become a Hydro instead of Geo. If instead I have Neuvillette and Ling, I have 1 Hydro, 1 Pyro, but one of them is going to be Pyro. When she uses her skill, as long as she has a Geo, at least one that's Geo, it will immediately shred Geo resistance. After that, it's going to fill up this by half. If she manages to fill up the rest, it's going to also shred resistances of any other elements that are on the side here. So long as this isn't filled out, you're only shredding Geo. But as soon as you fill it out, it's going to disappear and you're going to start shredding Pyro and Hydro as well in this situation. In order to fill it out, you need to use her Ascension 1 passive. Nedotilis Echoes. I'm pronouncing that wrong, but that's okay. While in the Night Soul's Blessing state, if XILONEN has at least 2 source samples, which are these triangles, are the source samples, if she has at least 2 triangles that have had their elemental types changed. So, if at least 2 of these are not Geo, that's the condition, she gains 35 Night Soul points when using her normal or plunge attacks. In other words, use her skill, it fills it up by half. You use a normal attack, it fills it up basically up to here. And then another normal attack, and it's full. If she has less than 2 triangles that have had their elemental types changed, so if 2 of them or more are still Geo, haven't been changed, instead of being able to generate more Night Soul, her normal and plunge attacks deal more damage. We now have all of the pieces of the puzzle of how she works, so let's put them together. All of this effectively means that if you play her in a team where you get at least 2 of the source samples that are not Geo, at least 2 of them get their elemental type changed, you'll swap into her, use your skill, attack once, attack twice, and you've shred your resistances. She becomes a relatively short field time support that shreds resistances. If, however, you don't have at least 2 of them change, if you have 3 Geo characters, for example, you don't actually have a way to generate more Night Soul like this. So this will never get shredded, but in exchange for that, she deals more damage. The main thing to keep in mind with this, though, is that her damage is bad. Her damage is not good. It's a gimmick. It's something that you can do for fun if you really want to play her on field. But it's not good. You shouldn't expect great results out of it. Even passable results are going to be hard to get. If you're trying to play her as a carry. However, even in a team like this, even in a team like, I guess, this, or I guess this would be like Farina or something, right? Even in a team where you would use like XILONEN, Chiori, Ito or something, whatever, because she shreds Geo no matter what, she can still be a good support option. Even if she doesn't fill up her Night Soul. So, more specifically, her skill is a defense scaling, and it gives you an alternative normal attack sequence, which is effectively the equivalent of just a Geo Infusion. And the normal attacks during that Geo Infusion scale with defense. Problem is, the numbers on these and on this are not particularly good, so don't expect it to be that good. I am not going to be focusing on damage XILONEN for the rest of this pre-release. I want you to know it is something you can do if you want, if you really want to play her on field. It's, like, doable. It's not the same thing as, like, trying to play physical Yao Yao, for example. Like, it is technically there and it is part of her kit. It's just going to be significantly worse than other actual good teams. So, her res shred lasts for 15 seconds. Because the source samples get activated for 15 seconds. At talent level 10, the res shred is 36%, which is almost as much as VV. And as we're going to talk about later when we get to artifact sets, she can use the Natlan artifact set for supports that gives 40% damage bonus. So she has almost 40% res shred and 40% damage percent, which is very similar to the buffs you get from Kazuha. So we're gonna talk a lot about comparisons to Kazuha in this video. Anyways, next up, her burst activates the Phlogiston Stereo DJ Controller Portable at full power, dealing Night Soul aligned AoE Geo damage based on XILONEN's defense. Additionally, she will trigger the following effects based on her different source samples. If she has at least 2 source samples, so again, right, this is her default state when you're using her as a support to shred elements, when you have at least 2 non-Geo reactable elements in the team. She will play an ebullient rhythm. I don't know how you pronounce this word. My bad. Healing nearby active characters at intervals based on her defense. This healing is not, like, insane, but it's not worthless either. It's alright. But it is single target healing, which means it doesn't necessarily max out Farina Fanfare stacks if you're using her in a Farina team all that quickly. If she has fewer than 2, so if you're playing her in damage mode or in a mono Geo team, instead of healing, she will do more damage. This is specifically relevant, I would say, in mono Geo teams as a downside. If you're not using her as the carry, if you're using her as a support, the fact that you need 2 non-Geo characters to get the healing means that you can't play her in a mono Geo team with Farina as the only form of, or as the only non-Geo character, and still get the healing for Farina. If Farina is the only non-Geo character on your team, then XILONEN is not a healer anymore, because her healing is reliant on you having two source samples that are not Geo. Which is very unfortunate, but it is what it is. Next up, I guess finally her last relevant passive. While in the Night Soul's Blessing state, when XILONEN's Night Soul points reach the maximum, she will trigger an effect equal to that of her Night Soul burst. This doesn't really matter. Additionally, when nearby party members trigger a Night Soul burst, XILONEN's defense is increased by 20%. So basically, she gets 20% more defense. Wow. So, we've gone over the basics of her kit. XILONEN is a support character that is used to shred resistances and get healing. And she's gonna be used in a lot of different teams. I'm not gonna do a weapon sheet for her because I don't intend on really putting too much emphasis on her builds as a carry. But we can still go over the weapons for her build as a support. I have artifact. That's artifact. Stats. Teams. Let's start with weapons. There's really not too many weapons to mention. Her damage is incredibly small in most teams, which means that pretty much any sword that doesn't have a useful supportive effect is worthless. Yeah, he's fake. The weapons that you'll potentially use on her are her signature Peak Patrol Song, Freedom Sworn, Favonius, and if you don't have any of them, you're gonna cope. You're gonna put something else, you're gonna be like, well, it is what it is, I guess. Like the craftables. Let's talk about the craftable. Flute of Esbitzel. Not X, Ez. So, her signature, gain Ode to Flowers. It's low base attack, defense percent substat. The effect, gain Ode to Flowers after normal or plunging attack hits an opponent, which XILONEN gets by default as a support. because in order to get her Night Soul, you have to use your skill and then attack twice. Defense increases by 8%. All elemental damage bonus increases by 10%, max 2 stacks. When this effect reaches 2 stacks, or when the second effect's duration, or when the second stat duration is refreshed, increase all nearby party members' elemental damage bonus by 8% for every 1,000 defense the equipping character has, up to a maximum of 25.6%. So this is going to cap out at 3,000 and something defense, which XILONEN can very much be able to reach with this. So it's effectively 25% damage bonus. On the other hand, if you look at Freedom Sworn, the condition for it is to trigger elemental reactions, which is a little bit harder, but still relatively trivial for her. And the effect that you get is 16% damage on normal charge and plunge attack and 20% attack. The effect itself is slightly better if you can make use of both, and slightly worse if you can't make use of both. So for example, if you're playing a character that doesn't scale with attack, or a character that doesn't deal most of their damage through normal charge and plunge attacks. What that means is that Peak Patrol Song, her signature, is going to be general best in slot. However, Freedom Sworn is going to very often be incredibly close, sometimes even slightly better. Main reason for that is because her personal damage is pretty insignificant. However, you will get like much smaller healing on Freedom Sworn than on Peak Patrol Song, because 80% defense, seeing as her healing scales with defense, is a lot. But I would say if you already have Freedom Sworn, it's definitely not worth going for a Sig. Livonia's Sword is going to be best in slot, free to play. Not because her ER requirements are incredibly massive, just because building more stats on her doesn't actually help any of your buffs. Her damage isn't really, if you're not staying on her, right, if you're using her as a support, her damage isn't really high enough for it to change too much whether you're building more damage or not. It's relatively insignificant. Her buffs are not reliant on her stats whatsoever. She always gives the same amount of res shred depending on her skill talent level. And she always gives the same amount of damage bonus because that's from the artifact set. Which means that the only things that get affected by her stats are the damage that she does, which is really low, and her healing. Her healing is on burst, so it's still nice to have ER. But unless you're using Farina, maxing out her healing isn't really that significant. And even if you are, she heals a decent amount, even if you're not min-maxing for healing specifically. Which means that by far the best thing you can do is focus on whether your weapon can help your team in another way, right? That's why Freedom Sworn is a good option. But it's also why Livonia's Sword is going to be your best 4-star option, because there's no other 4-star sword that actually gives you a proper... It's not directly a team buff, but it is a way to reduce your ER requirements on the rest of your team. And then if you don't have a 5 sword available, you just say, well, that sucks, rib bozo, I guess. And you just go for maximizing her healing. Fine. Craftable. Anyways, artifact sets. There's really only one. But yeah, I guess Zyphos could be a consideration if the rest of your team cares about the EM buff. I guess it... But yeah. 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 Anyways, artifact sets. Obviously, you want Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City. And it's the only thing you want. If you're doing literally anything else, you're griefing. You're completely running it down. Cinder City is Petra on cocaine. Like, I don't know. Actually, I don't know if I'm allowed to say cocaine on YouTube. Cinder City is Petra on heavy stimulants. If you were to give a 4-piece Cinder City to a horse that has never had it before, it would go crazy and you would be in danger. It's the artifact set is really good. 40% damage bonus. That's only reliant on getting a reaction with a very long duration. It's 15 and 20, but mostly 15. What about for Mono Geo? You shouldn't really be playing a team with 4 Geo units. But I guess if you are, then you could do something else, but like, who cares? Cinder City is just too good. There's no other set that compares. I'd say that if you're a character from Natlan who's a support, pretty much the only characters that wouldn't want to use Cinder City would be like Animo characters, so they can use VV, or if you absolutely need them on Deepwood on a Dendro team. But outside of that, Cinder City is like insane. It's just way too good. So Cinder City, when nearby party members trigger a Night Soul Burst, equipping character regenerates 6 elemental energy. So it gives you a bit of energy on the 2-piece, which is fine. But the big part is, when you trigger a reaction, all party members gain 12% elemental damage for both elements in the reaction. But if the character was in Night Soul's Blessing, so basically if they were from Natlan, instead of 12, it's 12 plus 28, so it's 40%. All of this to say, just use Cinder City. Please and thank you. Next, we have artifact stats. And in order to talk about that, let's look at ER requirements. So, same element, different element, clear. Caught, non-caught. Nevida, Farina, Kazuha. So, what's her particle generation again? Four particles. That's ball. Is he gonna catch them? I guess, right? Different element caught, maybe like 1. He's on 5. Okay, so that's one of the teams. What other teams could we include? I guess Arla, Bennett, Kazuha. Oh yeah, there's a refund, I forgot. Two refunds per rotation. Do you get 2 from her Ascension 4 passive? Is that what we're talking about? One for her passive and one for inside her cooldown? Yeah, okay. And then what's a team that's gonna have a low particle generation? Milani, I guess, yeah. Milani. Candace, Shangling, I guess. But both Candace and Shangling are gonna be on 5 in this team, so like. Yeah, whatever. What's Milani particle generation again? Is it 3 or 4? Oh, it's 4.5. Oh. Yeah, it's gonna be very similar. But without any 5s, your requirements go to 230. If she's the only one on 5, your requirements are at 180. Okay, that makes sense. Alright, we can talk about artifact stats now. So, now we can move on to artifact stats. As a general rule, going on ER defense healing bonus is going to be your best bet. Again, her build doesn't really matter too much for anything other than the healing, which means that healing bonus is generally going to be your best bet. However, you can also do ER defense crit rate if you don't have enough crit rate subsets and you want to proc your 5 no matter what. Or you can go defense crit rate or defense healing bonus if you already have enough ER. Now, in terms of ER, her ER requirements are going to vary a lot depending on the team. The Cinder City artifact set gives you a solid energy refund, and because her burst initial cost is not that high, it's 60, and because her particle generation is alright, you're not that reliant on using an ER sense. However, there are going to be teams, especially if you're not running her on 5, where your requirements get really, really high. So if you want to have her on one build and never have to change it, personally what I'm going to do is I am going to have her on an ER defense healing bonus set. However, I think in most teams you'll be able to get away with defense healing bonus. And finally, the part that really matters the most, which is the teams. XILONEN can be used in a lot of different teams. And I really do mean a lot. She can be used in pretty much almost every single team that uses Kazuha. You can't, like, it is possible to replace Kazuha for XILONEN. And then on top of that, she also has some Geo team options. She is going to fit a very large amount of teams. The question is she an upgrade to those teams? And the answer to that is, there are quite a few teams where she's a minor to medium upgrade, and quite a few teams where she's slightly worse than the alternatives. She's overall like incredibly versatile, which makes her a relatively valuable character. However, that doesn't necessarily mean she's like insane broken or that you have to get her. So let's talk about a few teams more specifically. So we can talk about Neuvillette. We can talk about Arlecchino. We can talk about Navia. We can talk about Ito. We can talk about Aggravate teams. We can talk about Vape teams. I guess Molani specifically. But we can also talk about Pyro Vape teams. We can talk about Melt teams. There are going to be other teams where you can use her, but I think talking about these is going to give you pretty much all the information you need. So, she doesn't stay in Night Soul off field. That's not, doesn't matter. The source samples stay activated. It doesn't. What? Why are you saying this? Who cares? I'm confused. I'm saying for Ito. In what way does that matter? You can't reduce Geores in 3 Geo team pre C2, but wait, am I an idiot? Oh. It deactivates itself. Does it actually deactivate itself? The wording here is like slightly ambiguous. Okay. Read C2. I see. I see. Okay, so for Neuvillette teams, you have generally two main ways of thinking about it. Usually when you're building a Neuvillette team, you'll have Neuvillette. The most popular Neuvillette team is this one, with either Zhongli or Baizhu. In this team, XILONEN can replace Kazuha, or she can replace Zhongli. And she is a viable option for both. if you replace Kazuha, what you'll end up with is bigger buffs, but you lose the stack from for Nevilet's passive. That being said, the second stat doesn't matter as much as the third stack. You don't lose as much from 2 stacks to 1 as you do from 3 stacks to 2. It's not like unplayable if you really want to keep a shield while playing Xilonen. However, if you think you can get away without a shield, then replacing Zhongli for Xilonen is going to be pretty good. Offensively, it's going to be most likely the strongest Neuvillette team, at least outside of speedruns that use Vape. Using Xilonen in this slot is going to offensively make the team stronger. However, you don't have a shielder anymore. In Neuvillette teams in general, she is going to be a good option, but she's going to be more offensively focused, and you'll have to make a choice whether you are willing to sacrifice the defensive utility that this slot usually provides. Neuvillette can get away without a shield, but a lot of people don't like playing him without a shield, so it really ends up being up to you. But nonetheless, Pog. Next, we can talk about Arlecchino. Arlecchino really wants to be used with Bennett. Outside of that, you generally either go for Vape or not for Vape. If you're using Vape, your setups with Xilonen will be a lot more rough to get a Pyro Swirl than your setups with Kazuha. So that could be a potential issue. But she would still be a completely viable option. That being said, Arlecchino likes grouping a little bit more than Neuvillette does. Neuvillette doesn't really care about grouping too much, because he can just hit everything anyways. Whereas Arlecchino's range is relatively limited. The alternative is to play her in a team like this one, or where you replace either of these with Xiangling right now. And if that's what you're doing, then replacing one of these like 2 flex slots with Xilonen is also a new option that you have. If you're looking for specifically Arlecchino personal damage in non-vape teams, going for Kazuha plus Xilonen is going to be a viable option. And it's going to be Pog as well. Now, I don't have Navia, so I can't do it perfectly, so I'm going to rely on the editors for help here, so thank you I have Navia right here. Cool. What I would consider to be the default Navia team right now is something like this with either Xiangling or Farina in this slot. The off-field app that you get from Zhongli or another character, you can also use Chiori instead of Zhongli, helps get more stacks for your skill on Navia. However, it's not necessary to get all the stacks. Navia's skill deals a lot more damage at 3 stacks than it does at 0, but the damage gained from additional stacks past the first 3 is much smaller than the damage gained from the first 3. That doesn't mean that it's useless. It's still a good damage gain, and ideally you still want it. But it becomes a possibility. What that means is that this slot, and again, right, Xiangling and Farina are kind of interchangeable. The slot becomes open to Xilonen as an option. You'll very often end up with, especially on your last, if you're doing a 3-skill rotation on Navia, your last skill is very likely to only be 3 stacks instead of more. But Xilonen's buffs pretty much make up for that and equalize it to be about as good as the other Navia team options. So Navia, Pog. Ito teams are a little bit weird. They're not bad, but again, I don't have Ito. So I'm gonna use Alloy as our placeholder. But in order to keep the Geo Res Shred when she swaps out, you need to have her on the support. Like you can't have 3 Geo. She will always shred Geo Res as long as she's on field. But when she swaps out, the Geo Res Shred stops, or the Geo Resistance stops getting shredded unless she has maxed out her Night Soul properly. What that means is that you'll play, if you're playing her in an Ito team, you'll have Ito and you'll have XILONEN, and you're not allowed to use another Geo. Otherwise, XILONEN is just worthless in the slot. Which means you would play her in an Ito team that isn't really Mono Geo Ito anymore. But it is actually going to be a pretty good Ito team. So you'll be able to do... because you're going to have 2 characters, because that's necessary for XILONEN to be really good here. Because you're going to have 2 Geo characters, or 2 non-Geo characters. She's going to be a healer, which means Farina is going to be a very good option here. And then your last slot is relatively flexible. You can go for something that gives you a bit more Farina damage and a little bit of personal damage, like Singto or Yelan. Or you can go for something that's a little bit more focused on their own personal damage, like Fischl, I guess. You could go for a dedicated healer to max out your fanfare more reliably without having to rely on XILONEN's healing. Something like Sijuhin, something like Kokomi. You have a decent amount of flexibility on the last slot. I would say that there's no last slot that's all that insane right now. Bennett would work as well, yeah. But, yeah. Overall, also pretty pog. In aggravate teams, right now, aggravate teams generally consist of a carry, Fischl, and a Modendro. Right? This is like the default core for an aggravate team. However, this is a core that doesn't have any healing. So most of the time, you're going to end up replacing one of these characters for a defensive option. If you replace... You can replace your carry for something like Kuki for a defensive option. You can replace the Fischl, but I would generally not recommend it. And then it's either replacing Kazuha for a unit like Jean. And if that's what you choose, then, well, replacing him for XILONEN instead is just going to be a better option. Between Jean and XILONEN, you'd much rather use XILONEN. And the other option is instead to replace the Nahida for something like Baiju or Kirara or Yao Yao. If that's something that you want, then XILONEN wouldn't really be useful. You'd rather play Kazuha than XILONEN if you already have defensive utility. Because Kazuha in these teams not only gives similar buffs, but also has a lot of personal damage. Especially in AoE situations. So in aggravate, solid. It's not quite pog because there's a good amount of teams where you'd rather not use her, but it's still pretty good. Next up, we have Milani teams. Milani teams already have a lot of flexibility in their slots because there's not that many supports that are that good with her. You can replace the Animo unit in the current good VV teams for her, right? So you can replace Kazuha with XILONEN, and I'd say that's probably an upgrade. This is one of the teams where it's like a very useful upgrade. You could technically replace the second Hydro here as well, although the setups are going to get a little bit more dank. But you also have the option of replacing, but Milani teams also have a lot of alternatives, and in these alternatives, in teams like this one, it's also pretty easy to replace any of your off-fielders that aren't really reliant on any of your off-fielders that aren't necessary for your vapes. It's a lot more likely if you're doing something like this that you don't end up getting a Hydro Crystallize, but even if you don't get a Hydro Crystallize, you still get the Shred, which is an advantage that she has over characters like Kazuha, is that you're guaranteed from just the fact that your team is built a certain way to at the very least get the Res Shred part of the buffs. In any case, with Milani, Pog, with Pyro Vape, we've already talked about Arlecchino, so let's talk about Hu Tao. So Hu Tao teams are generally, when it comes to the strongest Hu Tao teams, generally have the core of Hu Tao, Hydro, and then you either focus on Hu Tao's damage by doing something like VV Vape with this, or you focus on the rest of the team's damage by doing something with like double Hydro with Zhongli. XILONEN actually functions relatively well in both options. Although she's generally not going to be as good in the VV Vape because setups are going to get a lot more dank, she's still a viable option as a last slot here. But maybe more importantly, she is a very solid option as a last slot in the double Hydro core for this. Is she better than Xianyun when looking at healers that don't provide resistance to interruption, but that help you deal more damage with the team as a whole? I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. I'll have to give it a shot. I'll have to test it out to be entirely sure. But she's at the very least a solid option here. And then for other Pyro characters, you have stuff like Xiangling, for example. So International has been popular for a long, long time. Can XILONEN function in International? Yes. But again, you're gonna have potential issues with the setups not really allowing for double crystallize as easily. However, the flip side of that is if you weren't getting a double swirl setup to begin with, then XILONEN's setups not allowing for double swirls for double crystallize setups isn't really a downside And instead, the fact that she will shred resistance no matter what, even if she doesn't necessarily get the Cinder City buff on the whole team, makes her a better option if your setups are a little bit more scuffed. Anyways, in Pyro Vapes, she's going to be solid to Pog. In Melt teams, we're going to pretend Chongyun is Risley. So, teams like this right now are one of the alternatives for Melt teams. But the biggest issue that they have is that it's often difficult to get a Cryo Swirl because your debuff duration from VV and the buff duration from Kazuha aren't that long, which makes it difficult to get your Cryo Swirl at the right time. The best way when it comes to Risley is generally to use your burst as part of your setup, or to give up on having good uptime and use Swirl at the very beginning. And because of that, it actually leads to situations where a team like this isn't that popular because it's just too hard to properly get your Cryo Swirl. However, with XILONEN, because the buffs last for at least 15 seconds, using XILONEN in this slot and just starting your rotation by crystallizing Cryo, or even skipping the crystallize altogether but you still get the res shred, is going to be a very nice upgrade to these Melt teams. So, Melt teams, very Pog. All of that being said, though, I want to quickly touch on ways to improve your teams through Primogems. I talk a lot about horizontal investment, about trying to pull for more different characters because I think it's more fun. And I do stand by that. But I also think that in the case of a character like XILONEN, it's important to mention that if what you're looking for is specifically, okay, what is the best way of, say, improving my Neuvillette team if I already have this? If that's the question you're asking yourself, pulling for XILONEN as a replacement to Zhongli will not be as much of a team DPS increase as pulling for Neuvillette C1, for example. Having XILONEN will open up options, especially if you don't have as many units. It will open up options for team building to have two teams on either side in a way that's going to make your team building in general easier because of how versatile she is and because she's quite good. But if you already have specific teams in mind and all you care about is improving them, very often there is going to be a more efficient use of your Primogems. I want to just quickly mention that. But now that's done and we can move on. In any case, I think that kind of does it for the day. Oh yeah, I'll talk about constellations a bit. But yeah, that pretty much does it for XILONEN. She is, overall, a pretty strong character. I like the way that she's designed to technically have a damage option. Like a carry option. And I'll see if I can manage to make it work in a way that doesn't feel completely awful. Because I think that design-wise it's really cool. But balance-wise, it's awful, which is unfortunate. So you're gonna have to focus on her being an actually pretty good supportive character. But overall, I know a lot of you guys will specifically want to know, like, between her and Kazuha, who's better. What they each have is, in terms of just straight up buffs, they're about the same, right? Kazuha has 40% res shred, and generally between 30 and 40% damage bonus. ChesseBurgers has 36% res shred and 40% damage bonus. They're effectively the same in terms of buff, strictly. The difference is outside of the buffs. So, Kazuha has grouping, which is obviously a big deal, and has better damage. ChesseBurgers, on the other hand, has better uptime. Her buffs and debuffs last longer. And healing, which can potentially enable Farina in a team. As a whole, I'd say that Kazuha is probably slightly better. But I do think that when it comes to specific teams, it's really a case-by-case thing. And not even necessarily case-by-case for the team itself, but even case-by-case for the content. So for example, in content like this, you'd probably rather have Kazuha, but in content like this, you'd probably rather have XILONEN. At the end of the day, it's going to depend on how much you care about grouping. Something that I saw in TGS's video on XILONEN is he mentioned how we're starting to get bosses that are after a like relatively squishy first wave, as we have in this Chamber 2 here. And if this trend continues, it is very possible that the grouping from Kazuha becomes more important. However, one possible counterpoint to this is starting... I'm not sure if it's starting in 5.1 or 5.2. They are rebalancing the HP multipliers in Abyss. Effectively, an enemy that has 2.5... or an enemy that has 250k HP in 5.0 in Abyss will have 375k in either 5.1 or 5.2. Every enemy is going to be 50% tankier. This doesn't mean that Abyss as a whole is going to be 50% tankier, because they're also adjusting which enemies are in Abyss. And I think this is why. I think they realized, well, we're kind of getting tired of just adding new waves. So if we want to stick to a lower amount of waves, we should just make the enemies tankier. And I think that the fact that they're rebalancing Abyss hints at the likelihood of things like this not being around for too long. I don't expect things like this to stay around for too long. It's just speculation at the end of the day, so take it with a grain of salt. But those are my thoughts on it. I think that the HP rebalance coming up indicates that they're likely to go back to the boss chambers being only the boss. And if that's the case, then that specific point about Kazuha is not really going to matter for long. But we'll have to see if it actually does. Anyways, I think that's gonna be it. I hope you guys enjoyed the pre-release. There ended up being a little bit more yapping and a little bit less calcs in this one. Let me know what you guys thought. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, YouTube. Alright, let's do constellations now. So, constellations! Her C1 is worthless. Effectively, the first part doesn't really do anything. The second part is interruption resistance, but it's actually not a lot of interruption resistance. It's kind of just average interruption resistance. And that's pretty much the only thing the C1 does, which is awful. However, the C2 is pretty big. It's not as big as what you'd expect out of Constellation on the carry. So you're not going to get as much from this as you would from, like, maybe let's C1 or something like that. But it's still pretty good. It gives each character in the team a buff based on their elemental type. Geo characters gain 50% damage. Power characters gain 45% attack. Hydro characters gain 45% HP. Crowd characters gain 60% energy. And Electro characters restore 25 energy and decrease burst cooldown by 6 seconds when you enter the... or when you activate your source samples. Maybe more importantly, or not more importantly, but another important things is that the Geosource samples are now always active. They're not just always active when Night Soul Burst is active, which means that this enables you to add a third Geo unit in your Ito teams. You can now have Ito, XILONEN, Farina, Goro. C3 gives you skill levels. You go from 36 to 45, which is 9% res shred. It's not very good. Like, it's not bad, but compared to C2, it's a lot worse. C4, after using skill, she will grant all nearby party members the Blooming Blessing. Oh my god, I'm blooming. Effect for 15 seconds. Character with Blooming Blessing deals 65% of her defense has increased normal charge or plunge damage. And it can trigger 6 times. This is not very good. Like, it's fine. This is like a mini Shenhe buff, but it's like not that good. It's okay. It works. Whatever. C5 is burst levels, which also doesn't really do too much. And then C6 is a whole lot of yapping. I mean, you should be used to what the C6 does by now. It's the same thing as the last, like, 10 characters C6. It makes her a carry. Whatever, that's it. Not much else to say. Anyways, let's keep going. Alright, that's gonna be it for the video. Pog. And a Pog in the chat. 1 Pog for each happy moment during the recording. Wait, does that work in Abyss as well? Can you clip onto the top of the thing with just 1 jump? I didn't actually know you could if you can. I'll tell the editors right now. Recorded XILONEN pre-release today. I didn't even jump. What the hell was that?
My blade.
That's very funny. Alright. But I think that's going to be it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed your stay. I am going to publish the meta roundup video. Before I do, I'm going to pin a comment saying...
Hello.
I heavily underestimated the amount of submissions I'd get. As of the release of this video, we already have more submissions than I can get through. So it's very possible I won't be able to see yours. I apologize in advance if that's the case. Okay, business. I will post the video. Easiest abyss in a while. Poggers. It has been posted. As usual, if you can find it through YouTube, it helps a little bit more with the algorithm. But if you're